Good morning, Dr. Draper. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I was in the last session. It was just a
Yeah,
blessing.
I was there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What a great start for this day, I tell you.
Right. So I sent you you got a whole bunch of slides. We're gonna speed through some of those. But
Yes, ma'am.
I'm hoping that my son and my granddaughter join, but no Taylor. Her name is Taylor Peck. If you see her, Kevin Peck and Taylor Peck. If you see
Okay.
her. Oh yeah.
All right. I'm gonna prepare these slides real quick and make sure we got everything.
You got it.
Trying to make sure we got everything in order.
Okay.
This platform, Hopin, is a little different than the Zoom.
Oh yeah, it is.
We can make it work. I read through the bio, real impressed. I didn't know about the paper. Well, I'm glad you're gonna tell us about all that good stuff.
Right, and you're gonna become you're gonna become a subscriber, right?
Oh yes, ma'am. I've already got wheels turning up here.
Well, good. Yeah, so that's good. So nobody's in yet, right?
No, ma'am. Not that I see.
Okay, I was looking and see what that. That's the time. Is that the time or is that the eyeballs that are on there? You see where it's eyeballs at the top where it says 5?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, Teresa Hamilton is there. Hey,
okay, so look like we have about 5 people.
Yeah. Hey, Teresa.
All right. Well, it's 11 o'clock, so.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ronald Bogan. I am a member of the Rethinking Church Strategies Economic Empowerment Platform team. And this morning we have a great presentation with Dr. Frances Draper. Dr. Frances Draper she's a pastor of the Freedom Temple AME Zion Church there in Baltimore, Maryland. Also, she's the CEO, publisher of the AFRO-American Newspaper. Dr. Draper, we're waiting to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Let's open up with a word of prayer.
Yes,
God, we thank you and praise you for this day. So may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, God. Thank you for our moderator. Thank you for those who are joining us this morning. Thank you, God, for this invitation to share. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And amen. And so, as Brother Ronald said, I'm Frances Toni Draper. I've taken, I think, bivocational to a whole new level. I was a full-time pastor for many years when family asked me to come back to the family business. And so we can go on. We're going to go through this deck presentation, but we certainly want to invite people to participate. I see that that Taylor Peck is there. So I don't know if Taylor can come on camera or not, but we'll bring her up in a minute. You see her, Ronald? Yeah.
No, I don't.
Let me see. I'm gonna see if I see her, but yeah, there she is. I had to hit the plus myself.
Oh, okay.
So I've added her to the stream. Hey, Taylor. And so you can go into the next slide, please. And good morning to everyone. And so as I already said, so those things have been said already. So we can go to the next slide. All right. So the AFRO-American Newspapers was founded in 1892 by my great-grandparents, Taylor's great, I don't think I'm saying it right. After you get towards so many generations, you're supposed to say something else. John Henry Murphy Sr. and his wife, Martha Murphy. Now, the interesting thing about that founding, you can go to the next slide. Martha's father was an enslaved person, as was John Henry Murphy. And Martha's family came out of slavery. But when her father had some land, he gave it to his children. She sold it. Long story short, she got $200 from that land, and she invested it in her husband's dream, right, to start this paper. And he was 52 years old, and that was old in 1892. So he's 52 years old. He brought the name Afro-American that's already in existence. So we think we're, changing names around and doing something new. It was already there in 1892 at an auction. And so John and Martha had 10 children. And we can go to the next slide. So here's his mantra for business. My great-grandfather said that a newspaper succeeds because its management believes in itself, in God, and in the present generation. He said more than that. So I already said they had 10 children. And so their youngest son, my grandfather, Carl, took over as leader of second youngest son of the AFRO in 1922. His story is so compelling and so interesting. I don't have time to share it all, but I will share he was a professor of German at Howard and had also gotten an advanced degree from Harvard. He used to work with his dad on the weekends, coming from DC to Baltimore, and he ended up being the one that his father tapped to be his successor. But all of the brothers worked in the business, right? But the sisters received the same salary. So my great grandfather said, y'all going to work and pay your sisters the same, whatever you make, they're going to make. But one of the sisters was a member of the board of the company. So we're going to go to the next slide just to show you a historical picture. There they are in the office. That's the founder in the middle with two of his sons. My grandfather Carl is to the right, his brother John is to the left. All righty, so we're gonna go on down. So Carl, and so it's a big family. There are lots and lots and lots of people in our family. But Carl and Vashti Turley Murphy had 5 daughters, 4 of whom worked in the family business. One was my mother, Frances L. Murphy II. I lifted her up because she was also a publisher of the paper. And on the left, where you see Vashti and Carl Murphy, I wrote a book called No Ordinary Hookup, the love letters of Carl and Vashti Murphy from 1915 to 1916. And I found the original love letters and put them in a book. And some of you on the call may recognize her name. She's also a co-founder of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, a Howard grad. Okay, we're going to go to the next. And so I'm 4th generation, as I said. My son Kevin is 5th generation. He's going to try to get on, but he might not. My niece Savannah Wood, who directs our archives, is the 5th generation. And Taylor, who is on and has to teach a class herself shortly, is our digital solutions coordinator. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute. Taylor, why don't you introduce yourself and say a little bit about your background and what you do? I know you're in your car.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. It's interesting on my view. I can't see anybody. I can just see the presentation. Is that how
Yes.
everybody looks?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, I'm Taylor Peck. As my grandmother said, I'm 6th generation. I do digital solutions with the Afro. I have a business major from University of Baltimore, and my focus was entrepreneurship. So I worked at a startup for a few years, and then with the pandemic, I was laid off of my job, and that's the blessing of having a business that's in the family that's meant to be there for family members. And I was able to come on board and join the team and help to grow our digital side of the business and support the younger generations that we're trying to reach with the paper. So it's been a lot of fun and great. It's been great to be under my grandmother's leadership.
Okay. And we're not really a paper. We are a media company. We're a small business. We employ about 25 people, and our revenues fluctuate between 2 and 3 million. So we are in that small business category. But let me tell you a little bit about how we're structured as a business. We are a C corporation. You can go to the next slide. We are a C corporation. People ask us all the time, and they say, so we'll be 130 years old next year, 2022. How does a family business stay in business for such a long time? We've all heard the statistics that say that by the 3rd generation, everybody is at each other's throats. Family businesses don't survive. They don't succeed. I would love to say that our business is so different, but it's different in one way, that my grandfather, Carl, had the foresight to put into place a voting trust agreement. Now, this voting trust agreement, as far as I can go back and look, we're 130 years old. I think the voting trust agreement is at least 100 years old. When I say, so there are successor agreements. You cannot have a voting trust agreement for 100 years, okay? But they were usually 10-year agreements where shareholders, because we're a C corporation, we issue stock. We had 700 shares outstanding, 700 shares authorized rather. Of that 700 shares authorized, 665 are outstanding. The state of Maryland passed a law a little while ago, maybe, I don't know, it's probably been 10, 15, 20 years ago, that you cannot hold that kind of stock in Treasury. So we had to retire that stock. And so it's family owned, 100% family owned, 100% Black. Okay, so a lot of times we hear media that reaches out to Black people, but it's not Black owned media, right? So it's governed actively by fourth and fifth generational board members. And the way a voting trust agreement goes, many of you may know this already, shareholders come together and say, we're going to elect a smaller group of people, because we have about 100 shareholders. So people come together and say, we're going to elect a smaller group of shareholders to represent our interests. And so in the current voting trust agreement, there are 3 of us that vote the majority of the stock. Are people always happy in voting trust agreements? Of course not. They are not always happy. Have people sued within the family to break a voting trust agreement? Of course they have. Have they prevailed? No. And so it has stood the test of time legally. Not always has it been easy. Our family, which is the Carl, remember I said that the founders had 10 children. So our strand is the Carl Murphy strand. We happen to own more stock than any other family. Now, people ask me about that all the time. The founders divided their stock up equally over their 10 children, right? They did it equally. But my grandfather, when he was publisher from 1922 to 1967, longest serving publisher, he tells a story that when his sisters and brothers would come to him and say, hey, Carl, I need a little help, rent back or whatever. He'd say, sure, I will. They say, can I borrow money? He says, no, I will give it to you in exchange for your stock. So he ended up having more than his 1/10. He ended up having 30% of the stock. And there was a time in the company's history when the other 70% all band together in one of our voting trusts, and the Carl Murphy family was out for 10 years in terms. So what does a trust do? The trust allows the trustees to name directors. So I get to name a certain number of directors, as do the other trustees. And so, if you name directors to a board to be elected, shareholders nominate directors. I'll say it correctly. Shareholders elect directors, right? And I don't know if we lost our host or not, or whether they lost us. So let me stop for a minute. Those who are watching, can you still hear us? Can somebody let me know? Are we still in the meeting? Okay, you can still hear us. We just lost our moderator. Hopefully he'll come back. And so shareholders elect directors elect officers. And so currently we're in a voting trust. And like I said, they run usually every 10 years. Well, every 10 years, we would go through all of this, who is going to align with whom to form a new voting trust. So a few years ago, we said, let's do a 20-year trust. So we're in a 20-year trust. The 3 of us are the voting trustees, but 2 of the voting trustees are in the same family group, which is the Carl Murphy group. And so I know our moderator's out, but he's coming back. He's right. You're right on time, Brother Ronald. You're right.
Thank you.
You're right on time. And so the trust holds the shares. And so the shareholders get voting trust agreements. The trustees vote the shares. The shareholders sign the voting trust agreement. And for our family, that's what allowed us to get to 6 generations. Okay. Just something. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit, because when we were talking before the session started, Ronald was saying, I don't know a lot about the company. Would it be helpful, Ronald, for us to go through a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the AFRO was started in 1892. I'm gonna do this really, really quickly. So Langston Hughes wrote for us. Romare Bearden was a cartoonist for us. Sam Lacey, I don't know if you all heard that name. We know the Jackie Robinson story, but Sam Lacey really was the writer that pushed Jackie Robinson to the forefront. So we had a lot of well-known journalists, right? And a lot of young journalists came through. So my grandfather really promoted, as we still do today, unity in the Black community, exposing racism and all of those things that really we had 13 editions at one time, and 13 editions up and down the East Coast. At one time, we employed 200 people, had our own printing press as well. We no longer print our paper, but let me show you, we do a print edition, a legacy edition for those who prefer that. Let me show you what the paper looked like. The next slide will show you what it looked like back in 1893. I know you can't read anything it says, but that's the way it looked like. It looked back then. It was a one-sheeter that was like 3 cents. Okay, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to ask those of you who are watching, do you recognize anybody on that slide? Put it in the chat if you recognize anybody. I don't know if we can make it any bigger for you, but take a look and see if you recognize anybody. Nobody? Can you all see it? Okay, yep. Okay, Teresa Taylor sees Martin Luther King. We sing a young Martin Luther King. Okay, who else besides Martin Luther King? Who's the gentleman with the clergy collar? Who do you all think he might be? Very well, right. Fauntleroy. Thank you, Teresa. Fauntleroy is there in the in the picture. Very well known clergy person. If I told you his initials were BG, what would you all say? If I told you his first name was Billy, what would you say? Yeah, Billy who? That's Billy.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, Billy Graham. So we have all kinds of pictures. We have 3 to 4 million photos in our archives. 3 to 4, and I can talk a little bit about that if we have time. All right, let's go to the next slide. And so we're not a newspaper, we're a media company. Nielsen named us the #1 Black media company in the country. We're not saying that, they said that. But in addition to doing a print product, and I'll talk a little bit about our digital presence, and I'll ask Taylor in a minute to talk about digital again, some more about it. We did some publications a long time ago, and some recently too. So back in 1945, before any of us were born, I shouldn't say any of us, I don't know who was born when. Let's go to the next slide. We were one of the few Black publications that sent war correspondents to Europe, and they were journalists that we sent to Europe. And then we did a book called This Is Our War, where Black war correspondents from World War II talked about what it was like being Black in the Army. And so you'll see there are 6 men and 1 woman, and that is Carl Murphy's daughter, Betty. She got sick in Europe and ended up having to come home, but her story is still in that book, and we probably have some limited copies of that. If you go to the next slide, we've done something. We did a whole series on Brown versus Board of Education. Go to the next one. We've done things on Martin Luther King. These are special editions. We did something on the African Americans who have won the Nobel Peace Prize. You can go to the next one. And then in 2019, we did a book that's available, I think, on Amazon called, you can go to the next slide, The Thing I Love About Baltimore. And then last year, we did a special edition called To the Front that is still available online. If you go to afrocharities.org, I think it's afrocharities.org. But we did 100 and some page book on Black women's participation in the suffrage movement. And we did that in conjunction with the 100th anniversary of that movement. Because if you just read your regular history books, you would think that we weren't there, but we know that we were. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the present. So we can go to the next one, and you're just looking at some of our front pages. If you go to the next one, this is this week's front page, Persevering Through the Pandemic. Once a month, we do a whole edition on a topic. And so this month it was the pandemic. Last month it was education. The month before it was Black sports. The month before that it was Black music. All right. Taylor, you want to talk about the Facebook Live that I host, or, and the next couple of slides?
Sure. So we host.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We host a weekly Facebook Live show called The Chicken Box. It's sort of in recognition to the chicken box and the love of the chicken box in Baltimore. I don't know if anybody's ever had one, the wings and the fries and the little bread underneath. But basically, it's your chance to get on. They call it the box or the soapbox, and basically speak your truth. So we host a bunch of different topics. Usually, they are in line with the topic for the month, and we'll get different experts and panelists, or just employees or friends of ours to come and speak their opinion about whatever topic. We've talked about education, we've talked about Black music, we've talked about the pandemic, to vax or not to vax, sending your kids back to school. The topics range, and it's been a really awesome way for us to drive traffic to our Facebook and then eventually to our site. So that's been one push. Anything else you want me to say on this one? It's nice.
Yeah, chicken box. If anybody who has an idea for chicken box, you want to get on the box on a topic, feel free to email me at tdraper@afro.com, and I'll pass it on so we can look at that. Last week, a week before last, we did a tribute to Tupac Shakur on the chicken box, as we were not celebrating, but commemorating the 25th anniversary of his death. And, love or hate Tupac Shakur. We had folk on just, talking about that. So it's a show to really get on the box with 2 X's. Don't be a chicken. Get on the box and speak your truth. And then we also do a lot of live interviews with people on our Facebook page. You'll see in a minute when you look at the stats, we have over 600,000 Facebook followers. And so people come to us a lot because we want to use our platform to get the word out. But when we interviewed the actors from The Bloods, and when we just, we went down to West Palm Beach to talk about the answers that people want there. When we did the George Floyd coverage, we do a lot of live coverage as well. Taylor, you can talk about the next one too.
Okay.
About the text campaign too.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, this is new. So a big push for us over this past quarter was sort of aligning they call it text stack. Sorry, there's something going by, maybe an emergency, but aligning our tech stack with our current subscribers. And so one new push we have is for texting. The ability for us to text you stories, especially if you're a member with the Afro. We can text you stories live to your phone, or you can also communicate with us and let us know, what's your favorite recipe, or send us photos of things that you're doing in the city. And it's been a really cool push because it's another way that we're able to communicate with our readers other than just on Facebook and in comments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So all of that to say that we're in the media business. And so our push is through this legacy family business, is to get information out, news and information out to everybody. And so just have a couple of things towards the end. And then I really do want to hear from those of you who are watching, but we have an Afro Mall. And so, this code is for you guys. So, and you can pass it on. I don't know how long it'll last, but everybody's not, this code is for you. So the swag 10, if you're interested in, Taylor, I don't know if you have your Afro shirt on. I have my Afro shirt on. We're doing something in Towson today. I think it's the Baltimore County African-American Festival. So we have folk out there, they have their Afro sweatpants on, and one of our popular items is the You're on Mute mug. So I have a couple of those around here myself. But that discount is for those of you who have registered for this symposium. And so I saw Reverend LaKesha Womack on a little earlier. I don't know if she's still on, or maybe you, Ronald. You can pass it for anybody who's registered for this symposium. And I'm going to say, tell them, remind me that I'm saying this, that discount is good to the end of the month. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make sure
That's
that
right.
make sure that we keep that code in place for those. All right, so let me do a couple of more things, and I hope we can have a discussion, Brother Ronald, because I'm just going through this really quickly. We are getting ready to publish a recipe book. We used to do something called the Afro Cooking School. It was at the 5th Regiment Armory, and people would come in there and cook and win appliances and all of that. Well, we're not having a cooking school per se, but we do want your recipes, and that goes to subs@afro.com. If we can get them by, and we want to publish those and give you credit certainly for. So I'll put that up. And finally, this is just a shameless push for if you're interested in doing a print and digital. Some people say I want that print in my hand. That's fine. Some people say I just want the digital. So we say for less than the cost of 2 Uber Eats, you can get the e-edition, and you can pay for it monthly. You can pay for it all at once. But go to afro.com. On your phone, it's a green button. If you're on the computer, it's a red button. And the last thing that we really, is it the last? No, it's near the last. So I mentioned our Facebook followers, and you see that. So like us on Facebook. We appreciate it. We're trying to get to media in the entire country in terms of number of followers. We are number 6 in the country, and that's with CNN and folk are all up in those top couple of spots, of course. But we are number 6, trying to get that number up, trying to get the engagement up. We tweet us, send us your news. We want to hear from you. We want to know about what's happening in your community. We have a dedicated business writer. That's all she does. And so she's getting ready to start a podcast called It's a Pleasure Doing Business with You. And that's going to launch in October. So if you have a small business, we want to hear from you. So we have almost 12,000 followers on Twitter. We are the only Black newspaper, end quote, newspaper that we can find so far that Apple News has allowed to be on Apple News for what it's worth. Instagram, we're over 10,000, almost 11,000 followers on Instagram. And so we want to push those numbers, get it out, but not just so the Afro can say, oh, wow, now we've got 50,000. No, so that we can make an impact, so we can get your news, so you can interact with us and engage with us. And so that is really, we're the community and culture, past, present, and future. I'm going to say one last thing. There's no slide for this. We have also joined with 9 other legacy, historically Black publications across the country, from East Coast to West Coast and St. Louis in between, and Houston and Dallas, to form a collaboration called Word in Black. Word in Black. So wordinblack.com. Check it out. It's no cost. The newsletter is free. And by the way, the Afro newsletter is free well. Okay. All right, Ronald, I'm going to turn it over to you. I see there is at least a question, but I know you might want to moderate that. So thank you, Taylor, if you have to jump off, but hang on as long as you can. There may be a question coming your way.
Yes, ma'am. The question is, Teresa Hamilton asks, how do you mitigate African-American interests against the backdrop of the media giants' agenda that might not be pro-African-American?
Well, that's a great question. One way we mitigate it is to make sure that we as African Americans subscribe to, follow, like African American owned media interests, right? And because there are a lot of agendas out there, and we know that, and some of you know this too, if it wasn't for the Black press, you would think that African Americans didn't get married, that our children didn't go to college, that we were all thugs and criminals, and we know there's a certain segment of the population that fits that profile, and they don't all look like us either, by the way. But so one of the ways is wherever you're located. I know everybody's not located in the Baltimore, Washington, DMV area who's on this symposium. Wherever you're located, and you might say, well, how do I find the Black newspaper or the Black press in my city? Go to Black Press USA or National Newspaper Publishers Association, and you can find a list by state of that. So that's one way we do. And the media giant, there's so many different agendas of some of the media giants. And I tell people all the time, just because there's a Black face behind the camera does not necessarily mean that they have the freedom to even write or say what they think. They've got a right to say what their publishers and editors and producers tell them to, for the most part. Not everybody, but for the most part.
Great. Well, we had a question. Chuck and I, we sat down and we developed a few questions. And one we wanted to ask, we know that Taylor is a 6th generation member of the team, of the family, rather, I should say. Are there any others that are involved with the paper, and what are their roles in the paper?
Okay, so not 6, she's the first 6th generation. Taylor, are you the oldest 6th generation person? I know you're young, but are you?
I think so. I think I was the first grandchild in this generation. So yes.
So,
Okay.
so the rest of her generation are much younger than she is. However, every now and then they might write something.
Right.
My grandfather Carl believed if you could walk, you could write. So I remember writing things at 12. So so that in that way. But in terms of 5th generation, our VP of marketing and technology is on the team. In terms of, and he's the oldest of the 5th generation. And then the youngest, or near the youngest of the 5th generation, Savannah Wood, is director of Afro Charities. And so I didn't talk a little bit about that. The Afro Charities was formed in 1963. It's our so we have a 501c3 as well. We really do believe in giving back to the community in any kind of way that we can. And so she directs Afro Charities. We're going to launch a major campaign because we've been awarded the right to develop a building for Afro Charities to house all those photographs I talked about and to curate them. And we're hoping to be able to handle other people's archives as well. But first, we got to get ours kind of organized for public and community access. So we want to do that. So she is behind that. She actually relocated from West Coast, or we tease her the left coast, to come back to Baltimore to be a member of the team. All right, see you, Taylor. Thank you. And so we are really intentional about that. Let me say this, though, Ronald, because I don't want to. The people that I named who are on the team, they're just a small fraction of the team. Most of the people on the Afro team are non-family members. Mm-hmm. Most of the people who are on our day-to-day operational team are not family members, but we do have we have no other 4th generation members. We do have a couple of 5th generation and one 6th generation. We do have 4th and 5th generation representation on the board.
Okay, great. Victoria, my wife, asks, on your Facebook Lives, do you ever cover topics addressing mental and physical health disparities in the African American community?
Absolutely. That's been a hot topic. Victoria, thank you for the question. The nice thing about the lives that we do, we archive those. And so you can go back, when you have the time and scroll through and see. So it could be a regular, because we do 3 or 4 lives a week. Chicken Box is just one of those. So you can go back and you can view those.
Okay, great. And she's coming from a social worker, clinical social worker standpoint to ask that question.
Mm-hmm. That's an important question, though. So I appreciate her asking that. That is an important question.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone else? But we see that you guys have a great plan of moving the paper forward and through the next generation and moving it forward with Taylor leading. I guess her younger cousins will come along as they continue.
Maybe, maybe, our generation, in fact, our fourth generation, we almost had like a blood pact. We weren't doing this, right?
Yeah.
So never say never, because all of us in the fourth generation. So my grandfather Carl was still alive, right? When most of us were born, we were, little kids, and our mothers. Another whole story. I just wrote about this. Our mothers trained to be journalists at the expense of the state of Maryland. University of Maryland would not admit Black students, and you had to go to Morgan, which a lot of people in our family went to HBCUs. We love HBCUs, but if you could not get the degree at Morgan in the state of Maryland, Maryland paid for you to go out of town. So my mother and her sisters got a full ride, 2 to the University of Wisconsin, 3 to the University of Wisconsin, 1 to the University of Minnesota, and then another sister. There were 5 of them, followed their parents' footsteps and went to Howard. So in that, I'm losing track of the question now, but in that third generation, I know what it was. So in that generation, our parents' generation, all we heard was family business, family business, family business, family business. We're going to your grandfather Carl's house because this is a true story. Because Bobby Kennedy is there, because W. Du Bois is around the corner, because Martin Luther King is there. We got to go and there's a meeting. We looked at each other and said, I don't think we want to do this, y'all. This is all consuming. And so we kind of made an unwritten thing that said, we're going to do something else. And so most of us in the Carl Murphy family did something else. In the other 9 streams, so since they had 10 children, the family had 10 children, a lot of them did other things too, not everybody. But all of us worked there when we were younger. So it's amazing that any of us is still there. And I was in ministry full time when family asked me to come back. So I've only been back at the paper since 2018. But another cousin whose grandmother was my grandfather's sister, he was there I was there with him for a little while back in the 90s, and then I left for ministry.
Great. Now I know a lot of the papers are going to the print. Going to the digital media away from print. And that is your biggest stream as far as the publication is the print. The digital media as opposed to print. And in the bio, I read that you was over the time you were scattered across America, and then they had to draw back and just come closer. Do you see the paper moving forward to the day of pass on a digital platform?
So we cover a lot of national news now. So I like to think of us as a daily. We are constantly posting, constantly posting, right? So that, and then we're putting out a couple of newsletters as well. So let me tell you a little bit about the digital challenge. And this is for anybody who's putting news out. The digital challenge is that most of us want our news for free. Somebody will just say amen. Just tell the truth and shame the devil. Most of us want our news for free. But here's the problem. The people who are producing the news, the reporters and others, they don't produce it for free. They want to be paid, just like anybody wants to be paid if you work a job. If it wasn't for the newspapers, the electronic media wouldn't have it, because they are picking stuff up. The electronic media, for the most part, when we watch our television news, we're getting sound bites. They're picking it up from people who are actually writing. Every now and then they're writing. So from a business standpoint, I'd love to do all digital personally, because I get my news right here a lot of times. But I recognize, let me be honest, that when I get that, a lot of times it is headline news. right? And so we start talking about it. Oh yeah, but did you see the CNN said? But all we did was read the headline. We didn't even read the first two paragraphs, and we had this whole opinion that then goes over to social, and people start weighing in. Right? That's how we have so much misinformation and fake news out there.
Yes, ma'am.
We propagate it, right? So we have to have it's we still have to have a business model. And that's why I ask every time I speak for people that look like us, please support the Black press. Because if the white press has a cold, y'all know we have pneumonia. You know
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
So the trend now for white publications and white media is to gobble things up. You all know the Baltimore Sun, those who are in Baltimore, they were bought by hedge funds. So the trend is to buy them up. But if you build up the Black press, our voice would be gone. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Gone. So we, our economic model says that we need sponsors and advertisers. The sponsors and advertisers want to know, what are your analytics? How many page views do you have? What's the engagement? What stories are your people reading? How many people are actually subscribing? So all of those questions get asked, right? And we have to be able to say, this is what happens. So that's one of the reasons that the 10 of us have come together across the country to form that partnership. But even with the Roland Martins of the world, I know that's not, he does he's a commentary. The Roland Martins of the world, the Kathy Hugheses of the world, right? The business models are all about eyeballs.
Yes, ma'am.
And the more eyeballs we can get, the more that we can hold on. And there are only 230. This may sound like a lot. There are only 230 Black owned papers in the entire country.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And all of them are not able to keep up. Many of them are 2 and 3 people trying to cover a whole, city or state or something or region.
Well, I know for us with the economic empowerment team, we're going to push the paper. We're going to continue to push the paper. So you'll get an uptick. I promise you, at least for me, I'm going to do my part. And I see others in the chat say they're going to do their part.
Well, I appreciate that. And we want to do our part, guys. We know we have a part to play. We are determined and small. And like I said, we really are, we're in this digital space deep. We're in the digital space deep, but the reality sets in and says, okay, you've got to be able to monetize this digital space. And then in the state of Maryland, where we're based, for legal notices and things like that, bid notices, legal notices, the state of Maryland doesn't allow you to run those digitally. So you have to have a print product to do that. And you have to be what they call a paper of record. So there's legislation that gets introduced every year to say, let's do digital. But the reason that bill does not pass every year is because there's a segment of the population, a lot of people who look like us, who do not have access to, they don't have good internet connection, or they have a phone that's not an iPhone. It's a phone that doesn't do a whole lot for them. And so that's why they keep defeating the bill.
Okay, great. All right. Well, Dr. Draper, we enjoyed having you today with us. Is there any other questions anyone have in the chat? I'm not seeing any. Do you have other contributors to the paper as far as throughout the country?
Throughout the country, throughout markets, we have lots of people who freelance for us. We have people who send in. If you have a story idea, I know we're putting a lot of things in the chat. I hope it's editor@afro.com. If you just go to afro.com, you'll see an about us. But yeah, we welcome well-written topics of interest to our community in general. But it could be a commentary, it could be an opinion, Or you could be a journalist. I don't know who's in the audience. You could be a journalist yourself, and you're looking for some place to market your story. So, you're not getting paid with us the same thing you get in the New York Times, and we're not asking you to do stories that we assign for free. Now, if you send in a commentary, we don't pay for commentaries, but if we assign you a coverage for something, we do pay.
And those assignments happen regionally based on your location, correct?
Depends on the topic, right?
Okay.
It depends on what right. Let's say that somebody on this call is in Tulsa, and when the anniversary of the Tulsa massacre came about, you're on the ground and you can give us a first eyewitness kind of account because you're there, right? You may say to us, I can do a Facebook Live, and we'll say, yeah, we want you to do a Facebook Live, but we also want you to write that story so we can post it.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Draper. We enjoyed having you once again. We look forward to others reaching out to you throughout the day and after this through the information that you gave us, at afro.com. Also, afro.com is the paper. Please go out and support the Afro-American newspaper.
Right.
Digitally or print, whichever way you decide to go. We have the info that's going to be on the page. So please support our Black Afro-American newspaper. Dr. Draper, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for the invitation. You did a good job, Brother Ronald.
Thank you.
You did a good job. All right. Take care.
All right. Have a great day. You stick around for other sessions.
Okay. I'll try to. I'm actually, I'm putting on my clergy hat in a few minutes. I'm officiating a wedding. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. Have fun.
All right.
All right.
All right. Take care.
God bless.
God bless everybody. Bye-bye.